Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sasha Farba. Ukraine has marked 35 years of independence on Monday, with fresh pledges of military support from its European allies, including plans for Ukrainian production of long-range Storm Shadow Scalp missiles and faster deliveries of air defense weapons. But Kyiv says the immediate danger is much closer to home. It urgently needs hundreds of Patriot interceptors before another winter of Russian strikes. And joining us now is Yevheniia Kravchuk, Deputy Chair of Ukraine's Committee on Humanitarian and Information Policy. Good to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, we said we marked that 35 years of Ukrainian independence. Now, if we go back, I think some striking numbers for our viewers, 1991 to today, but also if almost 13 years. If we look at Euromaidan, the revolution there, that's almost a fifth, really, of time that Ukraine is fighting for its freedom. What does independence mean to Ukrainians now, also after 4 years of a full-scale invasion?
Well, basically, it means living in a free country that is not controlled or occupied or being told what to do by, a bigger neighbor. And it is actually the war for independence. We even amended our legislation, and this war of aggression is being officially named as a war for independence. Many Ukrainians say that in 1991, well, thanks God, USSR broke, relatively peacefully, and no wars were shattered across the continent at that time. Well, obviously, Russia, still wants to keep the empire, so that is the root cause of the war. And Ukraine obviously had chosen European integration and European dimension back in all of the revolutions that we had against the corrupt government that didn't want European integration. So it is solely also not solely the independence, but also the choice to be among other European allies and in European family.
Yeah, and those European allies, quite a few of them, a lot of leaders were present there on Monday, including the Council President Antonio Costa as well. I'm just wondering as well, we have also this new pledge, apparently, that has come from the newly arrived Prime Minister of the UK, Burnham, who said very much those Storm Shadows, those long-range cruise missiles, that technology is going to be made available to Ukraine. So if you can, how significant does that change things on the battlefront right now for Ukraine? How quickly can those kind of missiles be produced?
Well, it actually means that Ukraine is not just, receiving the aid, but also becoming a partner in the military production. You mentioned that military expenditure is actually helping economies in Europe in your previous videos in the news, and that is true, but also these technologies need development. They need to be better tested, and obviously now this war, unfortunately, is the best way to test any new, old and new technologies. So it is extremely important that Ukrainian producers that actually proved they're extremely capable of pumping up production, even during the full-scale invasion, will be able to have joint ventures together with French and British manufacturers who do produce Storm Shadow or Scalp, as it's called in French version. So it is very important, and of course, the long range is something that is changing the course of the war, because before the long range, Russia was just merely, striking balls and, just like shooting us and saying, oh, that's, they're just on Ukrainian territory, doesn't affect Russian territory. Obviously, they do not really count the occupied territories as theirs, because they're completely ruined when they occupy them, so they do not care. care. But they care, obviously, about the mainland Russia, at least not to shatter the myth of the great empire. And this, great empire wakes up every morning and reads in the news about, another oil refinery being burnt, or, producer of weapon, or those who are supplying, supplies for producement.
Right, and I think also, as we said, this Storm Shadow, this UK-French combined project, it's significant, but it'll take some time to go. But it's really the interceptors, right? That air defense from the Patriot, the missile system, that's what Ukraine needs right now. President Zelensky said he needs 300 interceptor missiles to get through the winter. Now, with these high-profile visits on Monday, including the UK Prime Minister, who's apparently headed to Washington in the next few weeks or so, do you think that's going to strengthen Ukraine's case for the Americans to allow for more Patriot batteries, or at least the interceptors, to be sent to Ukraine?
So these missiles that are interceptors could be found, of course, in the U.S. That's the biggest stocks, but also in some of the European countries. So we need to, to have this common support on supplying a bigger number to Ukraine, especially, when winter is approaching, because not being able to guard our civilian infrastructure, especially in big cities such as Kyiv or, Dnipro, other cities that are, more than 1 million people living in it, meaning that we could face the possibility of humanitarian catastrophe if all of the centralized heating station will be completely destroyed. And one of the three heating factories in Kyiv was destroyed already during the last winter. And, obviously it's not possible to rebuild it completely by the next heating period. So that's why we say it's urgent matter. We do have some of the missiles coming after January, as contracted prior, so we could sort of switch with those that we get into the stocks right now. But it is an urgent matter, and I do hope that British Prime Minister, by the way, it's his first overseas visit, and it is to Ukraine, and he was co-chairing the Coalition of the Willing yesterday, that he will also put some effort to help to fund that PAC-3.
Yeah, and you mentioned also the Coalition of the Willing. And then my next question there, in terms of the kind of announcements, the pledges, I'm not going to ask about the significance, but what can you tell us from what was decided there on Monday as well? And just to say it in terms of the British, I think it was the very first visit, one of the very first visits by, I think, a foreign dignitary was actually Prime Minister Boris Johnson. I think that was also something. So Britain as a close ally of Ukraine. But tell us about this Coalition of the Willing. What do you expect out of that meeting from yesterday?
Well, at the same day, European Commission sent another 6 billion from the Ukraine support loan for the military expenditure. We do still have the gap in the budget for the military expenditure still in this year. So it was discussed. Obviously, the decision cannot, come up just out of one meeting, but we are lacking between 20 and 27 billion euro for this year military expenditure to get ready to winter as well. So I think that's something that will stay on the table of Coalition of the Willing. And by the way, we also had the meeting of Nordic-Baltic 8 countries day before the Independence Day, when we were celebrating National Flag Day. So all of the 8 leaders of Nordic and Baltic countries came to Ukraine, and one of it is not in the European Union, and also announced, it's Norway, announced 8 billion for the next year in different types and different sorts of aid. President Macron was also pushing for some additional efforts. I think some there'll be meeting of the troops, or trying to have these like combat missions in other countries to sort of train. So we'll see also how the coalition of the willing will be communicating with the U.S. because it still stays there, this open question: what would be how to bring the position of the U.S. to to be more present on Russian Federation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you mentioned an interesting connection there with all these Nordic countries who've been very much at the forefront of support for Ukraine. Also, I think the hope is there that not only that support continues, but I said that lobbying will continue as well. Tell us a little bit more about this gap you mentioned. President Zelensky, I think it was 27 billion. Now we have 6.1 billion. That's through defense procurement covering missile and air defense. That comes from the EU. That brings it to about 22 billion. But how significant, let's say, is that shortfall? And how can you plug it? I mean, I know that we've talked about the frozen Russian assets in the past. Is this going to now be, again, the hope that Ukraine gets access to those?
Well, President Zelensky actually mentioned that it is obvious that Russia has to pay for basically, for having still this war, waging the war, and it would be fair to seek this money into the frozen assets. I know that Belgium is still hesitating because they want to have a backup from other countries, but obviously it could be resolved as having the early reparations, basically, but so Ukraine could use them on their own decision how to be used.
Mm-hmm. And also, I mean, looking at now the sort of medium term in terms of what Ukraine needs right now, I know it's about air defense, I know it's about Patriot batteries and about the interceptors, but what in your mind, also coming from the independence celebrations, what is right now what Ukraine needs at the moment, if you give us something tangible?
We do have a very large military, so it's over 1 million. And since 2022, the salaries of those who are not on the direct front line, and troops, they keep changing. So you go on the front line and then you move for a little bit rest in another region. So the salary of those who are not on the basically ground zero on the very first front line hadn't been changed, and it's in euro. I think it's I can't change it to zloty, but in euro it's I think between 400 and 500 euro, which is really not a lot. So when a person gets this money and, for example, he or she is the only breadwinner in the family, well, that makes really complicated and a lot of people complain. So I think also what we need in just finance support is to being able to support these big numbers of the army, so we would not experience the breakthrough from Russian troops on the ground, because right now, we're not talking, you're not asking actual questions on what's going on the ground, because on the ground, we're relatively, they occupy some land, but we deoccupy the same square kilometers of the land. So it's not like that successful. So we're talking about what they can do, seeing the breach in our defense, which is the air defense and the lack of the Patriot missiles. But we also need to think about the military and the support of this army.
Mm-hmm. Also, the military, I mean, we saw some images earlier, but I think significant is how much of a modern military, especially with drones, Ukraine has become probably one of the most modern in the world. We'll have to close it there. Thank you so much. Really appreciate those insights as always. Yevheniia Kravchuk there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching World Talks, but do stay right here on TVP World for more news and commentary. Goodbye.